you'll look out there on the water, you'll see my son and his friends kayaking. While I sit here on the beach and record lectures about communication theory. What I want to talk about here is a kind of really interesting principle that comes up on page 98 is where it really begins the discussion. It goes on for a few pages. And that's the distinction. Eccles first introduces it, but it's Popper's theory. And it's this three-world theory: World 1, World 2, and World 3. World 1 is the material world. It is a physical world in which there are objects in motion, matter and substance. And therein lies the essence kind of the empiricist, physicalist, materialist point of view. All that is matter and all that happens is motion. And that if anything can be explained or understood, it can be explained or understood in terms of motion, right? And in terms of matter, in terms of the physical laws, right? So the kids are out here gliding the kayaks across the surface of the water, right? I can explain the movement of the kayak by explaining the idea of the relationship between the surface tension between the kayak and the water, and the tension between the paddle and the water itself, right? The muscle pulls the paddle across the water, which creates more surface tension, more tension than the resistance between the kayak and its surface. So the kayak slides over the surface as the paddle pulls back, right? So I can explain the motion of the kayak in terms of its physical laws, which is fascinating and awesome. That's World 1. Now, what Popper suggests is he says that some people believe that World 1 is a closed world, that there is nothing from any other world that enters into that. There is matter and motion. He rejects that. World 2 is this world of the psychological self, right? He says, there's a world of our, and this is page 99, he says there's a world of our consciousness, our awareness of things, our psychological dispositions and expectations, and our feelings of pain and pleasure. I call this psychological world World 2, right? So I started off by taking a little picture of the guys sliding across the water in the kayaks out there. And I take a certain joy from that, right? I like to paddle, I like to kayak, I like sunny days, and to watch my son and his friends doing something that I myself really enjoy, well, that makes me feel good inside, right? But now I want to leave the beach at 3 o'clock. It's about 2:55, and I see that the guys have come in and dropped off the kayaks, and then 2 of his buddies are headed out in them again, which means there's no way I'm getting out of here by 3 o'clock. Not going to happen. That gives me a feeling of disappointment, irritation, because I told them 3, and now it's not going to happen. But be that as it may, here's the idea that I think is really, really interesting. That's all World 2. Now, Popper says, listen, there's a connection between World 2 and World 3, like the two worlds, or World 1 and World 2. There's a connection between them. He doesn't necessarily know what they are, but he believes there is an impact. And Eccles, right, when he introduces this subject, is trying to figure out, he can explain, how the brain sends a signal to the muscle that causes the muscle to move. He can explain how those things happen. What he can't explain is how the thoughts in my head, the idea I should do this, happen, right? Physics and physical laws and neuroscience can explain, right, how the brain makes the muscle move, the paddle, and it can explain how the paddle makes the kayak move over the surface of the water, but it can't explain why anyone would want to go kayaking. That's World 2. All right? Now, World 3, and this is the third world, okay? World 3, and on page 100, Popper talks about this, is the world of the products of the human mind, the contents of thought, right? And he says 3 times 3 does not equal 12, okay? But what he's talking about is that what world 3 is, as far as he's concerned, is this world of theory. It's the world of ideas, right? World 3 isn't the physics that make the kayak slide across the water. World 3 is the science and the study of physics that explains how the kayak moves across the water, right? World 3 is that body of explanations, theories, ideas by which we make sense out of the world and operate in it. Okay, so world 3 is this shared world, all right? And this is what makes world 3 fundamentally different from world 2. World 2 exists in my head. World 2 exists in my feelings. But world 3 exists outside of the world in this other kind of way, right? World 3 exists between humans. And the reason why this struck me as interesting is because as communication scholars, I mean, obviously it's a comm theory class, we're interested in theory, and theory is part of world 3, right? But as communication scholars in particular, I mean, isn't communication where world 3 comes from, right? That world 3, as opposed to world 2, I can envision a person who has no language having psychological responses to situations. I can envision a world in which a person has no language who still has feelings and ideas about the world. But in order for world 3 to exist at all, there has to be some level of language. Now remember Popper talks about how the 3 people involved in this dialogue, Eccles, right, could be thinking in English, and elders could be thinking in Dutch, and Popper could be thinking in German, but they could all be thinking the same thing about physics, right? Like that's entirely possible. Even though they're using different languages, but there has to be language in order for it to function, in order for those ideas, right? Like without language, how does my idea get from one person's mind to another one? Like, so of these 3 worlds, which I think are fascinating and interesting, world 3 is inherently a world constructed by communication. And that's, I think, the one thing that I don't know that they necessarily get out in their dialogue, that doesn't really come out in the debate very much, but this idea of, constructing world 3 through communication, and that when we're studying communication, what we're really studying is world 3. I think that's kind of fascinating, kind of interesting, like kind of glimmer of insight, like ding, 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 a little bell went off, and I felt like I really had to put that on a video and get it out here for us to talk about. So, thoughts, feelings, ideas? I don't know if they heard me or not, but it looks like the kids have pulled their kayaks out of the water, and it's time for me to get rolling. So, I hope you are enjoying your sunshiny days, but you're not. You're probably sitting and watching videos and thinking about how you're going to do discussions over Popper and Eccles. So, good luck.